Good morning, all, and thank you for joining us for today's webinar. Uh, Welcome to our presentation on how companies are leveraging test automation of core Oracle Cloud applications during these challenging times. Leading today's call is Lavanya Salagundula, Head of Testing at Suneratech. Please feel free to ask questions during the presentation in the Q&A section of the webinar, and we'll address those during the Q&A portion of the call. Thank you again for joining us today, and I'll turn it over to Lavanya. Lavanya, all yours.
Thanks, Art. Hi, everyone. This is Lavanya Salagundla. As Art mentioned, I head a test engineering practice and the CloudTestr platform, and I'm based out of Chicago. Welcome to the webinar. The reason we are having this conversation today is, we are living in unprecedented times. There is a lot that changed in just a short 2 to 3 month period. But we're coming out of it and in a phased manner, but is there going to be a new normal when we come out of it, right? So when I looked at the different phases of how the business are getting impacted, you look at we've already, I think, moved to phase 2, phase 3. We are returning to normalcy. I'm in Chicago, and we are seeing that by tomorrow we should get into phase 3 of most of the businesses getting open. But even though we are opening back, how does it impact how we do our businesses, right? Considering what all went through in the past 2-3 months. So the purpose of this call is to talk about how can you leverage automation as part of your business continuity strategy to make sure that there are no business disruptions that are happening when you keep getting new updates that are coming in, whether you're on cloud applications, on-prem applications, whether they're custom applications, whatever different types of applications that you have or software that you're dealing with, there's always changes that are coming in, whether you're making them or whether it's been done by some third-party applications that they're interfacing with, and that impacts your systems. And how do you make sure that you're not running into problems and you're not going into a firefighting mode because you have not anticipated some of these changes? And how do you make it a simple process by leveraging automation as much as possible, right? So how automation can minimize your business disruptions. Automation obviously will provide you ability to adopt new changes much faster. It gives you agility. It also provides you predictability, right? For example, let's say that you have frequent releases that either you are making changes or, like you said, third party is making some changes, and that brings that requires you to continuously test your systems to make sure that everything is still working fine. But if you have automation in place, you don't have to worry about things. You don't have to find people who could actually do the testing, or you don't have to hope and pray once things go into production that, hey, everything looks good, right? Automation can provide you the ability to continuously validate any changes that are coming and hitting your systems to make sure that at least your business critical processes are working well. Right? When I talk about business critical processes, it could be your procure to pay process, it could be your payroll processes, it could be your order to cash, all the critical things that need to absolutely work for your business to function. Right? You cannot, even if you stop making any changes during this time or do any new projects, you still need to keep your lights on. And how do you make sure when you're keeping the lights on to ensure that you're not having quality issues or getting some challenges when things go into production and then go into firefighting mode, right? So it also helps with quality of any rollouts that are happening. Obviously, with automation in place, you can continuously run your regression tests, trigger the automated tests, and make sure that all the critical processes are continuing to run. You can also free up your key personnel into focusing on business critical activities versus focusing on doing testing that really does not add any value. And last but not the least, it also helps lower cost. Once you have automation in place, you should be able to reduce the amount of spend on doing testing, right? So it could also help with lowering the costs as well. So at least you could start automation with business critical processes, and then you can start expanding it into other areas, right? For example, how do you want to leverage automation for complete regression testing? If you're on cloud and if you're getting continuous releases, then how do you make sure of leveraging automation and all, right? So one of the main things that we have noticed with customers, especially customers who are on cloud applications, is the change management process. Since with the cloud applications, you get continuous delivery that requires you to validate things frequently. And since you don't have control on the infrastructure, on the release cycles, on what goes into a release, that requires you to plan and accept these changes, or like I said, don't do anything and hope and pray that everything works, right? And which is a risky strategy at this point, especially for cloud, because there is no backward compatibility, there are no rollback options that are provided to you. So it'll be very challenging if something gets missed and it goes into production. Then you're going to have a hard time dealing with it for the next quarter or whenever that issue is going to get resolved, right? So it's better to plan for it. It's better to start thinking about automation to make sure that you don't run into issues like that. Same thing with if you're on-prem, you still have integrations, you still have upstream, downstream changes that are coming in. The changes could happen monthly or quarterly or bi-weekly, right? So there's certain things you can control, certain things you can't control, but you still want to make sure that if there are any changes that are coming in, if you can continuously keep testing your critical processes, it would make sure, it would enable you to ensure that you don't run into risks, and you can keep your business continuity without any problems, and be in a firefighting mode, right? So I want to specifically talk about cloud applications, especially customers who have either undertaken the journey into cloud or in the process of it. Obviously, there are a lot of benefits of moving to cloud. So you do get continuous innovation, you get faster delivery of new features and enhancements. You do have a predictable timeline in terms of when releases are coming in. I know different cloud or providers have different schedules. For example, if you're on Oracle Cloud, you get a quarterly patch release that that you will have to uptake. But at least that when it is coming, so you can plan for it. Somebody else is managing it, so you've got a lot of operational overhead that is being shifted to somebody else versus in your organization. And you get a lot of new innovative features much faster. You get fixes much faster, right? So there are a lot of benefits, obviously, but it also brings new responsibilities from your team standpoint, whether you planned for it or not. You have to keep up with the pace of change that is coming in. You cannot say that, hey, now I don't have enough people, let's put it off, the patch out to the next release or to the next year, like you are able to do it for on-prem. You can't do it with cloud, right? So you have to, keep up with the pace of change that is coming in. You have to plan for the new changes that are coming in to see whether you want to adopt them, when do you want to adopt them. At least you've got to evaluate those things. Maintaining the continuity of the application, again, it's critical that you ensure that everything is still working fine when these patches are getting applied. And obviously continuously doing regression testing whenever these patches are getting applied. Again, it doesn't have to be just the patches that are getting pushed by your cloud provider, but it could be the third-party systems like Vertex tax pushes, or any other Hyperion making some changes and that impacting your systems and whatnot, right? So you will still need to continuously plan for ensuring that those are getting tested, so that you're not running into issues. So continuous testing and validation has always posed a challenge for organizations to keep up with the pace of change, keep up to make sure that whether you want to keep the lights on or whether you want to continuously adopt new changes, depending on your current business situation, automation plays a key role in making it successful, right? So I want to take a quick customer case study to talk about how they were able to leverage automation. So this is an Oracle Cloud customer that has, as part of their cloud strategy, has migrated where HR, financials, and supply chain systems to Oracle Cloud SaaS applications. Once they've moved to cloud, then whatever we've just talked about comes into play, right? In terms of quarterly updates that were coming in, and the challenges, obviously, in terms of uh, testing all these things. And specifically for Oracle Cloud, when you get these changes, you get 2 weeks to do all this testing. And whether you test it or not, after 2 weeks, it goes into production, right? So you're on a clock, right? So in this 2 weeks, you need to figure out what are the changes that are coming in, how does it impact your implementation, how does it what kind of tests you should be running, making sure that there are no security breakdowns that are happening, right? So there's a lot of work that you have to do within that 2 week window. And the 2 week window requires you to not just understand the changes, do some testing, find issues, log any tickets associated with the issues you found, get those resolved, retest it. So there's a lot of work that has to go in within that 2 week window, right? But if you look at automated release lifecycle and what this customer has done by leveraging automation, is it's a simple process. There is an automated impact analysis that is happening. So nobody has to really go and read the release notes to figure out what is changing and how does it impact what to test and what not. There's a release impact analysis report that gets generated. Then you can look at what change the impacted changes, what updates need to be done on the automated tests, make those updates, execute the automated scripts, also do auto health checks in terms of are there any process slowdowns that have happened, are there any security breakdowns, run those tests as well through automation to make sure that you're not just doing functional testing, you're also making sure that there are no from a non-functional standpoint, you're not running into issues. You can do complete end-to-end flows, whether you want to run the tests end-to-end, from hiring, making changes to the same employee, adding benefits, absences, and then terminating that employee, checking how the payroll is getting processed. There's a lot of end-to-end transactions that you can test as well, right? Get all this done within 2 to 5 business days of the test pod getting updated. Any issues are found, get those reported. Once it's fixed, retest them, and get the release signed off and good to go, right? So it gives you a lot of confidence. There's a lot of predictability in place, and your business doesn't have to spend too much time worrying about doing testing versus doing other tasks that they need to do in their day-to-day job, right? So what are the benefits realized by this particular customer, right? So the benefits realized by this customer are obviously the proactive change and impact analysis for the quarterly updates. All the validation done within 5 business days. It could happen between 2 to 5 business days, depending on the number of test cases a customer would have. You can free up key personnel to focus more on business critical tasks. Increase test coverage with automation, right? With automation in place, you don't have to pick and choose. Obviously, you can start with business critical processes, but you can also expand it from a coverage standpoint, right? For example, if you want to test different types of hires, you can have one automated test, but you can actually run through data management. You can run almost 30-40 different types of hires, right? So that broadens your test coverage as well. So you don't have to just do limited amount of tests because of the time limitation or resource limitation. You could actually do complete coverage through automation. And last but not least, a lot of customers who leverage automation are able to adopt new features much faster. We've seen that almost 2 times faster. Customers are able to adopt new features that are being provided by the cloud provider versus keep putting it off until you have time, but you're losing out on the benefit of being on the cloud, right? So these are some of the benefits realized by this customer. So we wanted to talk about the platform that has enabled this particular customer in terms of automation. So CloudTestr is the platform. It is an enterprise platform. It not only supports cloud applications, but all the on-prem systems, whether it's Oracle or SAP, PeopleSoft, any on-prem systems that you might have. From a SaaS standpoint, it does support, again, Oracle Cloud, Salesforce, any of the SaaS applications that you might have. Also supports all the different types of integrations, whether it's inbound, outbound integrations, whether it's API based, file based, whether it's Dell Boomi or OIC or any types of integrations that are available can be supported to ensure that you're not only doing functional regression testing but also integrations testing. Supports end-to-end testing without manual intervention, so we can run a complete procure to pay process or order to cash process without any manual intervention by leveraging the test set functionality that we have in the platform, and I'll quickly show you in the demo on that. It also looks at any transaction level performance degradation that might be happening, or any role-based security, right, to ensure that there's no security breakdowns that are happening. We provide this platform, provide it as a platform as a service, where you can still, you'll have access to the platform, log in, look at the dashboards and metrics. You can download the test documentation, which we auto-generate, and I'll show you how that looks. You can also download the test results files. All that information that is critical for you is available in the platform, while most of the time we do most of the heavy lifting in terms of automating, maintaining, executing the tests. We do have a lot of pre-built libraries or pre-built test cases for most of the common ERP applications like Oracle EBIS, Oracle Cloud, SAP, S4HANA and all. It's a scriptless solution. What I mean by that is we don't really write any code. From a platform standpoint, we capture and configure a transaction, and the platform auto generates the code for us. So that enables us to get automation up and running pretty fast. For example, if you have Oracle Cloud, we should be able to get you up and running with automation within 4 to 6 weeks. If it is just a business critical processes, we can actually get you up and running within 2 weeks. Right? If it is EBIS, we could get you up and running in 6 to 8 weeks. Same thing with SAP. Right. So depending on the type of applications, predominantly we are able to get automation up and running under 8 weeks. Sometimes much less time than that. Same thing with maintenance. We can maintain the tests within pretty fast. So anytime there is a release after we onboard you onto CloudTestr, every time there is a release, we can execute these tests within 2 to 5 business days, including maintenance of the test as well. Right. So that's a pretty fast turnaround in terms of automating, maintaining, and executing the test for any type of application that you might have. Let me just do a quick demo. So this is the login screen that we have. The platform is hosted on the cloud. We can also host on-prem if that is a preference for customers, but predominantly we are hosting it on the cloud. So when you log into the platform, you get the dashboard view as soon as you log in. We do create for every organization, it will be your own setup where you could see your own applications that you have in place. Right. So you can see the test case development view, what is getting automated, what has been completed, what is being reviewed and signed off, what is in progress and whatnot. Right. So you can actually see a complete dashboard view from test case development, test executions. Even in test executions, you can see how many test cases were planned to be executed, how many got executed, how many passed, failed. Right. All the stats that are important to you, you can take a look at it here. You can even drill down into more details. So for example, I've just drilled down into the HCM cloud. You can also filter it by the modules or the products. Like if you want to just look at core HR, I can just apply core HR and see how many tests have been completed, how many are still in progress, how many are being reviewed and signed off. Right. So you can kind of drill down both from a development standpoint, from an execution standpoint, as well as from defect standpoint, so that you can get all the stats that you're looking for by logging into the platform at any point in time. Right. So same thing with defects as well. We've got different views of the defects. We can also integrate with your defect management tool if you want. Let's say if you're using Jira, or any other defect management tool, and you want these defects reflected in your tool as well. If you expose an API, we can replicate the stats in your tool as well, right? You can filter by releases as well. So if you want to just look at the view from a particular release, that is something that you can see as well, in terms of what was planned for execution for that release, what are the stats for that particular release, and whatnot. Let me just show how one of the test cases looks. I will take an example of ERP Cloud, create journal test case. So if you look at it here, when I talk about auto generation of the script, right? So what we mean is we are going to capture the transaction so that we are actually capturing how you have implemented the application, right? Whether it's on-prem systems where you have done a lot of customizations, or if it is a cloud applications where you have done your configurations or personalization specific to your implementation, right? So as part of one-time initial onboarding process, we do capture and configure your specific implementation. And while doing that, we also take screenshots, right? And the benefit with that is we auto-generate documentation. So if you look at it here, I can actually click on this and create a PDF file of test documentation, right? So multiple benefits of it. Your documentation is always going to be up to date, because tomorrow if a create journal process changes, then as part of the maintenance, you can actually update this, and next time you are generating the document, your document is always updated. And this is obviously one of the challenges that a lot of customers we have seen face. There are people who know all these processes, who do the testing, but it's not necessary that they will go and update the documentation. So over a period of time, it's in people's heads on how it works, all the changes that have happened over a period of time, but nothing's documented. So if that person leaves, then you'll be in a lot of trouble in figuring out how a particular application works, right? So that problem you will not have, and it's pretty detailed. So you've got a screenshot, you've got the steps, and the step definition is configurable as well. So you can put as much detail or as little detail as possible on this. That is preferable by your business. And it's pretty detailed, right? So some of our customers even use this for training purposes, because you pretty much have a good amount of screenshots and steps that are there, so that they could just download the document and give it for training as well. The other benefit of capturing the screens obviously is from a results standpoint. So if you look at it in the run history, you see when we have executed these tests, how long it took for us to execute a test, whether it's passed or failed, where we executed it, and all that information is available to you right here, right? And if I click on one of these tests, even if you look at the results files, it's pretty detailed. You've got the details of the test, the environment, time it took. If there are any failed steps, you could see it up front right here with a screenshot, right? So you don't have to actually go through the whole, scroll through the whole thing to figure out where it failed. And this is also something that you can download as well for if you want to have your business validate the tests, or to ensure that everything still looks good even though you don't execute it. You still have the capability to just come to the platform, download the test results, and take a look at it, right? So again, the test results are also pretty detailed. You've got the screenshot, you've got the step, whether it's passed or failed. All that information is available to you at your fingertips, right? So this helps you with getting business sign-offs as well, even if you don't yourself run the test. And again, it takes very little time for tests to be executed, because we do parallel executions, unmonitored executions, so you don't have to sit and babysit a test running, right? So that's from test results standpoint. And also I talked about performance monitoring. So if you look at it, we do clock the amount of time it takes every time we run this transaction. So we run reports to figure out if there is a degradation in performance of this particular transaction, and if it does, then we can notify you, right? For example, if in 20A release, if it took about a minute and a half to execute this create journal test, and 20B rolls in, and if it's taking me 2.5 minutes to run the same running tests, then there's definitely significant degradation in the transaction performance of the transaction, right? So that's something can be notified, and you can take a look at it and get it rectified, right? Same thing from a test data management standpoint. We do pretty detailed test data strategy as part of our initial onboarding process to figure out what data is being used for the test and scope, whether it's static data, dynamic data. If it's dynamic data, then where is the data coming from, right? So if it is on-prem systems where we have access to the database, we could actually write queries to get the data as a pre-step before we run the test. But if it is cloud and we don't have access to the database, then we can run reports and get the necessary information as inputs and run the test. Or if it is an end-to-end flow where the data dependency is between different tests I'm running, then I could actually run it as a test set with dependencies, which I'm going to quickly show you how it looks, so that we can actually take output of the first test as input to the next test case and so on and so forth. So we're kind of stringing tests together with dependencies so that the data is actually flowing through the test. Right, so multiple means we do data management to ensure that data doesn't become a challenge when you have to do test executions. And that is one of the key challenges that you would face with automation, right? Two main challenges you would face with automation. One is maintenance, and one is data, right? So if you can figure out both of these, you will be pretty successful in implementing automation and making sure that you're actually leveraging it release over release. We've seen a lot of customers actually get a tool, and they get some people to build framework around it, get automation up, invest 4 or 5 months to get automation up. But then if you don't know, if the maintenance it takes a lot more time than you actually have when a release is happening, then more or less you will end up doing things manually. And after 2 releases, whatever work you've put in, whatever money you've put in, everything is going to be wasted because your scripts are so out of date that it'll be almost like a new project for you, right? So maintenance within a stipulated time when you do releases is important. Second is data. If you have a good data strategy, you will ensure that you don't keep going back to your business or somebody from your IT team to provide the data for automation tests to be executed, right? Then it's an activity on its own. It takes a lot of time and effort from your team. Right, so those are two important things if you are doing evaluation of automation tools or platforms, to see how maintainable it is and what is the data strategy, right? And let me quickly show you the test set functionality I've been talking about, how it looks, right? So for example, if you take this, okay, let me show you this one, right? So this is a hire employee, adding a contact to that same employee, and then terminating that employee, right? So it's kind of an end-to-end flow. If you take a look at that, we can actually create a dependency here to hire an employee, and then we use the same employee to add a particular contact to that employee, and then I can terminate the same employee, and I can rehire the same employee, and I can do a lot of things as an end-to-end process. So if you see, we've created that dependency. I can also, as part of my test orchestration, add another test where if you see, these two have no dependency, right? So I can have these two run in parallel while these run in sequence, right? So we're kind of orchestrating the test so that we are taking away any manual intervention required to do any test, right? And it could also include tests between applications, right? For example, if you want to create a quote in Salesforce and then process it through your EBS system, so you can do that as well as an end-to-end flow, right? Even between applications, you can do that. Even if you have integration, for example, if you have an EDI integration, you're getting some file from a third-party system and then processing it through your application, you could do that as well, right? So kind of gives you a lot of flexibility in terms of doing end-to-end flow without manual intervention, right? So let me just quickly show you the execution of the create journal test I've just shown you. So if you look at it here, we could just trigger the execution, and it all happens in the background. Don't have to sit and monitor the test. There's a lot of unmonitored executions that could happen in VMs, and we can spin up as many VMs as possible to run multiple tests, right? Like for example, if you have HCM, ERP, SCM, EPM, multiple applications, then you could you could just trigger those tests on multiple VMs in parallel. So you could get the test results as soon as possible, right? So it gives you a lot of flexibility in terms of getting tests completed pretty fast. And when we talk about business critical processes, then you can actually set it up in such a way that we can schedule the test anytime you know that there are changes coming in, whether that you are making or whether third party systems are making. You could just trigger those tests at that point in time, your business critical processes, and check to make sure that it's looking good, right? And if there are any action that needs to be taken without your team having to spend any time figuring out or wanting to do the test manually and taking away time from them, right? So it's all can be done through automation pretty fast, right? So let's go back to how it works, right? So in terms of the whole process, so it's a pretty straightforward process. You sign up to CloudTestr and share the application details and documentation. We'll agree on the scope for automation. We will set up CloudTestr access for your organization, and then we'll do the capture configure of these automated tests that have been agreed in scope. That is a one-time onboarding process that happens. Once that is done, we can move into maintain and execute mode. So every time there is a release, we could just trigger the test. We can update the test if there are any impacts of the changes, and retest if there are defects that get resolved, and share the final results for sign off, right? And we also provide on-demand support. For example, if we find any issues and you require some support to do these fixes, we can do it on demand. You pay for what you use. It doesn't matter the skill set, if it is a functional support, technical support, SR management, if it's Oracle, all that can be done on demand. So you're only paying for what you're using, right? So currently we do have an offer on business critical processes where you could sign up with us, and we will do all this for free for the first 90 days, where you could we can get your business critical processes automated, and then we can execute them, maintain and execute them, and also provide some on-demand support as needed, right? So if there is interest, I will share a link today where you can go and sign up for it. So why CloudTestr? We're providing this as platform as a service. So you're not licensing a tool where your team still needs to figure out how to use the tool and all that. We provide it as a service, but you still have access to the platform. You can log in. You can look at the results. You can look at the documentation. You can look at the metrics, things that are important for you. It's available to you at your fingertips, versus having to wait for your partner to let you know what's going on, right? We provide this as a subscription consumption based pricing. You pay for what you use. You just subscribing to a service. We do have pre-built test cases available for packaged applications, both on-prem and cloud. It is an enterprise platform, so irrespective of what type of application it is, we can automate. You don't have to look at multiple tools if you want to start somewhere and then expand it into other areas, or if you want to do end-to-end testing across different applications, that would be helpful as well. We do have good metrics and dashboards. We perform automated data management, so we take away the challenge of test data. We can onboard within 4 to 6 weeks, predominantly for most of the applications, and we can execute under 5 days. We do have automated change management process to ensure that you don't have to sit and read the release notes. We will share a impact analysis report for you. Also perform auto health checks. We auto generate documentation. The results files are pretty detailed, so your business is going to be quite happy in terms of reviewing the results and signing off. It also supports inbound and outbound integrations, and audit support is another key aspect, especially if you have financial systems and you have internal or external audits that happen frequently. Then whatever the auditors are usually looking for is already available in the platform, so you don't have to really spend a lot of time on this, right? So these are some of the key aspects. We can move into Q&A now. If there are any questions, then I can take them now.
Sure, great, Lavanya. The first question is from Amy, and it says, "You mentioned this is a scriptless solution. Can you elaborate a little bit more on what that means?"
Sure. So what I mean by scriptless solution is we don't really write any code. The platform auto generates the code for us, right? So that's what we mean scriptless solution. So that enables us to get automation up and running pretty fast, right? And maintenance is another thing that is easier because you're really not, going and updating the code to whenever changes have come in.
Okay, great. And then the next question, this looks like it's coming from an anonymous attendee. It says, "You noted that automation can be up and running within 4 to 6 weeks. And how many scripts would you guys be automating during that period of time? Because it seems like a short period of time."
Yeah, we can, if it's a cloud application, we can automate almost 400 to 600 test cases within that window. If it is on-prem, it could take, we could do about, I would say 300 to 600 test cases within the 6-week window.
Okay, great. Next question is from Jessica. It looks like they're inquiring about can they use CloudTestr to test their customizations within the Oracle applications?
Yes, we can test the customizations, and that's the whole thing, right? We don't want to test any vanilla stuff, right? We want to test how you have implemented it. So yes, we do validate the customizations that you have, as well as any personalizations or configurations that you might have done as part of your cloud applications, or if there are any fast formulas that you have implemented that requires to do some testing, right? So all that has been taken care of from an automation standpoint.
Okay. And then maybe I can ask a follow-up to that. So can you maybe explain how that's done in a little bit more detail? How do we capture the customer's customizations?
So first step is we actually need to understand what are the customizations being done by customer. That can be done multiple ways. We can, if you already have test cases available that has captured that, we can use that, or you could share the documentation, the Cambly documentation or BR100 documentation, or any documentation that helps us understanding how did you implement it, right? Once that is done, we finalize the scope, and then we will do the capture and configure process of your application that includes the customizations. And what we do is we put validations in place to make sure that we are actually capturing those customizations or personalizations in case of cloud, so that next time there is a release comes in, and if they change or they're impacted, we would have failed that particular step, right? So that's kind of how we're capturing the customizations for the individual customer implementation to ensure that we're actually testing their implementation versus any vanilla scenarios.
Great. And then maybe can you expand a little bit more on when you said this is testing as a service? What does that mean to prospective clients?
So what I mean by as testing as a service is, so basically it's an all-inclusive thing where you don't have to purchase licenses, or you don't have to have resources who understand how to use the tool, or you don't have people sitting around when let's say that your applications only have changes that come in every 6 months, right? Then you really but you still want to use automation. You don't really need somebody sitting around who knows how to test this, who knows the automation scripts to do that for you, right? So it's kind of an all-inclusive thing where you get best of both worlds. You get access to the tool where you can look at things that are important for you, but you also don't have to train your team to again learn another new tool, how to use it. So the heavy lifting of getting automation up and running, maintenance and execution, and all that is being done by the partner, right? So that kind of gives you best of both worlds. That's what I mean by testing as a service, because you're not you don't have to look at individually in each component that really is required for an automation project. Like usually if you want to go with a tool, then you need to get the tool. If it's open source or licensed product, if it's licensed product, then you have to acquire the license. And then you need to get team who actually knows how to use that product, build a framework around it, and then get the automation up and running. And then you need to have those people available to you, and you need to continuously pay for the license AMS of the license, and for the team who needs to keep up with it, right? So it's a lot of moving factors involved that makes automation unsuccessful, and more often than not we're seeing it become shelfware for a lot of customers, though they might have tried their hand with automation.
Okay, great. This is a question from Sid. It says, just to be clear, this will automate the manual test cases, or will this just use the already built automated test cases, or both?
No, it automates the current manually done test cases, right? Currently, if you're doing it manually, we can automate those. We are not just taking automated tests and updating it. We're kind of getting you up and running with automation.
Okay, and that kind of leads into this. There's another question. It says, do you help customers jumpstart their automation process? And it says, do you maintain any repository of tests?
Yes, we can help jumpstart automation. We can even create an automation roadmap for you. If you have different applications, you have no automation in place today, we can actually help you, create a roadmap to do what would be quick wins, what applications you can get started in 4 weeks or 6 weeks, and then incrementally every 2 weeks, how do we get more and more automation across the different applications that you might have in place, right? So yes, absolutely, we can get you up and running with automation fairly quickly.
Okay, great. And the last question right now that's out there is from Jessica, and it says, basically, how do you handle test data? So maybe can you elaborate a little bit more on the test data management capabilities?
So test data, like you said, we do come up with a strategy in the beginning when we do the initial onboarding to figure out what kind of data we're using, whether it's static data or dynamic data. And if it is dynamic data, then again, we'll figure out, every time if we need to update the data to run the test, where do I get that data from, right? Or and if it is some specific customer data, then where am I getting that from? And in terms of PII data, then we ensure that we kind of mask the data. We have encryption processes available to ensure that we are not seeing any of the PII data also available, right? So there's a lot of things that we take into account to ensure that a data strategy is in place, so that once we are onboarded and once we are moving into execution phase, we are not running into problems because of data, and we're not keep going back to the customer asking for data in order for us to do the testing, right? So that delays testing, as well as that takes up a lot of time from the users to get us the data, right? So we kind of plan for it to ensure that there is a data strategy in place from an automation standpoint.
Okay, great. There's no other questions at this time. Last chance if you have a question.
Yeah, and if you want more information, like I said, you can go to cloudtestr.com. For the offer that I talked about, you can go to this site, suneratech.com /cloudtestr /COVID-19. You should be able to see more details on the offer, FAQs of the offer, so all that information that you need to enroll into the offer. You also have points of contact details here. You can reach out to us at cloudtestr@suneratech.com. For Oracle Cloud customers, we also have CloudTestr on the Oracle Cloud Marketplace. I provided the link here as well. So once the webinar is done, we will share the presentation as well as the replay of this webinar, so that if you want to share it with your colleagues, you can do that as well.
Okay, great. Well, thank you everyone for joining. This is going to conclude the webinar today. Lavanya, thank you very much for the presentation and for your time. We hope you find it informative. And again, please reach out to us if you have any further questions, and we'll get back to you with answers. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.